Mornings in Evergreen Heights were like something out of a lifestyle magazine, quiet, polished, and curated to look perfect. And for a while, I played my part flawlessly. My name's Claire Donnelly. I'm 39, a top-performing real estate agent in the northern suburbs of Boston, where houses come with 4-car garages and neighbors pretend they've never heard the word divorce. That particular Thursday morning, I stood in my sunlit kitchen, reviewing a contract with one hand and sipping my almond milk latte with the other. The quartz countertops sparkled. My silk blouse didn't have a single wrinkle. Everything about my life looked like it had been pre-approved for Pinterest. Then came the usual thundering of footsteps. "Mom, I need to be at school early for track practice." Sophie, my 12-year-old daughter, came flying down the stairs like a whirlwind. Her chestnut ponytail was bouncing behind her, and she was already dressed in her team gear, cleats in hand. I handed her a bowl of Greek yogurt with granola. "Eat. You're not outrunning anyone on an empty stomach." She scooped a bite and grinned. "Coach says we might make regionals this year. Ava's mom said you're the best agent in the district. Everyone's talking about the Lexington listing you closed." A small spark of pride flickered in my chest. "They should be," I said, winking. "That deal had 12 offers. Your mom's a shark." As Sophie scarfed down breakfast, my phone buzzed. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Mom. Eleanor Sterling. A name that still made me straighten my back just hearing it. I tapped the screen and tried to sound cheerful. "Good morning, Mom. How are the preparations for Sophie's birthday coming along?" she asked without a pause. I ordered a cake from Celine's Bakery, the same one that did the mayor's retirement party. It's shaped like a first-place trophy, just like the one Sophie won at the state science fair. I winced. I already ordered her cake, actually, from Moonlight Bakehouse. Sophie requested their raspberry velvet. There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. Oh, well, I just thought something more. Symbolic would be appropriate. Not like that plain vanilla one we got for Ethan's birthday. There it was, the dig. Not even subtle anymore. "Please don't compare them," I said quietly. My sister Julia's son, Ethan, was 13, a sweet kid who'd been struggling in school lately. Julia and I had always been close, until life pulled us in opposite directions. While I chased degrees and job titles, Julia dropped out of college, got married young, then divorced by 30 and moved into a modest apartment on the edge of town. When I offered to help her out financially, she refused. Every time, "I'd rather work nights than owe you," she once told me. And she meant it. "Anyway," my mom continued, ignoring the silence, "I suppose Julia won't make it to the party again. She's always got an excuse. Actually, she said she's trying to switch shifts." "Well, if she cared enough, she'd find a way," Eleanor huffed. "You did. You always made it work." The call ended soon after, but her words hung in the air like a sour perfume. Sophie finished her yogurt and dashed out the door as her friend's mom pulled up. I stood by the window, watching her leave, then scrolled through my phone and tapped Julia's name. "Hey," I said as soon as she picked up. "Any chance you'll be able to come to Sophie's party this Saturday?" There was a long pause. "I'm working. I couldn't swap shifts. I'm sorry." "It's okay." I just thought, Sophie would love to see Ethan. I could almost hear the sigh on the other end. "I'll send something. Maybe bake cookies." The way she said it tired, distant made something twist in my chest. After we hung up, I found myself staring at a photo on the fridge of us as kids, arms around each other, grinning with popsicles in hand. That felt like another lifetime. Before the comparisons, before the pressure. Before Mom carved us into the one who did everything right and the one who never tried hard enough. That night, after my husband Daniel got home still in his blazer, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, I filled him in on the party plans. "She's really not coming?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sophie's been asking about Ethan for weeks. She said she's working," I said, then hesitated. "And I don't think she wants to deal with Mom." Daniel didn't push further. He knew the history. The favoritism, the subtle jabs that always found their way into conversation when Mom was around, especially toward Julia and Ethan. "Let me know if she changes her mind," he said finally. "I'll make sure the grill's fired up." The next 2 days passed in a blur: balloons, party favors, the cake pickup, a final deep clean of the house even though it already looked like a Pottery Barn catalog. On Saturday afternoon, Sophie bounced around the living room, showing off her new camera to her friends, while Daniel adjusted the speaker volume, and Eleanor made sure everyone knew who Sophie's grandmother was. The doorbell rang. A delivery guy stood on the porch with a brown paper box. "For Claire Donnelly," he said. "From Julia Alston." I took it inside and set it on the kitchen island. I knew what it was before I opened it. Cookies. A small card inside read, "Happy birthday, Sophie. Eat as many as you like. Love, Aunt Julia and Ethan." The cookies were slightly misshapen, chocolate chips off-center, some edges darker than others, but they were clearly homemade. Still, something felt off. The scent wasn't quite right, sweet but faintly bitter underneath, almost metallic. Eleanor walked in behind me, sniffed, and wrinkled her nose. Well, I suppose store-bought was too much to expect. I didn't respond. Instead, I quietly placed the cookies in a container and slid them to the back of the fridge, just in case. Later that night, after the cake was cut and the guests had gone, I called Julia. "Thanks for the cookies," I said. Sophie loved them. Lie, she hadn't even seen them. There was a beat of silence on the line. Then Julia said, "I'm glad. That means a lot." Something about her voice unsettled me. It was softer, but not in a peaceful way, more like someone who'd finally exhaled after holding their breath for too long. I should have thrown them out. That basket of cookies sat in the back of my fridge like a ticking clock. I told myself it was just cautious instinct, that I was being paranoid. But if I was being honest, I knew it wasn't just the odd smell. It was Julia's voice on the phone that lingered with me low, brittle, like something inside her was cracking and she didn't know how to stop it. On Monday, I was back in my home office, sifting through listings and client requests, when my phone rang again. It was Mom. "Did you hear?" she asked almost gleefully. Ethan failed his math midterm. Again. I swear, that boy just doesn't apply himself. I clenched my jaw. "Mom, stop, please." "I'm just stating facts, Claire." "No, you're not. You're comparing." Again, there was a long pause. "Well," she huffed, "I didn't mean to upset you." I didn't reply. Just said I had a call with a client and hung up. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept slipping away from real estate documents and back to that box of cookies. I opened the fridge 3 times just to check. Still there. Still untouched. That night, I watched Sophie tap away at her piano while Daniel scrolled through work emails on the couch. Our house was calm. Our life was polished. But I couldn't stop thinking, what if something had happened? What if I hadn't trusted that gut feeling? It was Tuesday afternoon when Julia called. She never calls during the week. "Hey, you free?" she asked. Her voice was too bright, too deliberate. I knew her well enough to hear the cracks behind it. "Yeah, everything okay?" A beat. Then, "Did anyone eat the cookies?" I paused, heart suddenly loud in my ears. "Sophie tried one," I said slowly, choosing my words. Then Ethan stopped by after school and finished the rest. Dead silence. Then Julia's voice shaking. "He what?" "Yeah. He said he hadn't eaten all day." I leaned into the lie, trying to sound casual. "So I gave him the cookies you sent." There was a sound, something clattered on her end. Maybe a dropped glass. Her breathing got shallow, erratic. "Julia?" I said, more sharply now. "What's going on?" She tried to recover, but she wasn't fast enough. I didn't know he'd come by. "I didn't think... You didn't think what?" I asked, my tone turning cold. "What's in those cookies?" The silence that followed was suffocating. "I have to go," she muttered, and the line went dead. I stood there, phone still in my hand, heart racing. My instincts were no longer whispering. They were screaming. I went straight to the fridge and pulled out the container. 6 cookies. Uneven, off color. I put them on the kitchen table, stared at them for a long time. Then I waited. When the doorbell rang an hour later, I knew it would be her. Julia stood there, drenched from the rain, eyes wild and puffy like she'd been crying the whole drive. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside and let her in. She walked straight to the kitchen. Her eyes landed on the cookies. Her shoulders dropped like someone had finally set down a burden too heavy to carry any longer. "I didn't mean to," she started, then stopped, swallowing hard. I folded my arms, leaning against the counter. "Tell me the truth." Her lips trembled. Laxatives, she whispered. Strong ones, but not dangerous. I just wanted Sophie to miss her swimming qualifier. I know how that sounds. I know how awful it is. She broke down. Hands on the table, her body shaking. Her voice cracked as all the emotions poured out in a wave she clearly hadn't planned. I was so angry, Claire. All the praise, all the awards, all the attention. And Ethan, he tries so hard, but no one sees that, especially not Mom. Every time she brags about Sophie, it's another reminder that Ethan is the problem, the underachiever, the disappointment. I stared at her, too stunned to move. Of all the things I imagined, I hadn't expected this. You wanted to sabotage a 12-year-old, I said, my voice flat. I know, she said, tears falling. And I hate myself for it. We stood there in silence. There were so many ways I could have responded. Anger, judgment, outrage. But all I felt was a bone-deep sadness. Not just for Sophie, but for Julia. For all the years she spent feeling second best. For every time she looked at me and saw what Mom never let her be. I never wanted this competition between us, I said quietly. But it was always there, she replied. Mom made sure of that. She wasn't wrong. I remembered piano recitals where I got flowers and Julia got scolded. I remembered school report cards where her B's were lazy and my A's were proof of potential. Somewhere along the way, that favoritism didn't just warp our relationship with our mom. It twisted the bond between us, too. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She laughed bitterly. Would you have believed me? I didn't answer, because the truth was, maybe I wouldn't have. Julia wiped her face with her sleeve and stared at the cookies. I should turn myself in. I shook my head. No, but you do need help. She nodded slowly. I'll get it. Therapy. Something. I just Claire, the first so sorry. I was angry at Mom. Not Sophie. I lost control. I reached out, touched her shoulder. You were drowning, but you nearly pulled us under with you. We didn't say much after that. She left quietly. I tossed the cookies that night. All of them. But the memory of them? That would stay. The house was too quiet after Julia left. Daniel had taken Sophie out for a late ice cream run, part reward for finishing her history project, part distraction. He didn't know about the cookies. Not yet. I wasn't sure how to tell him, or if I should. Not until I made sense of it myself. I stood in the kitchen staring at the garbage bin, where the cookies now lay buried under takeout wrappers and paper towels. Even sealed in a trash bag, they carried a weight, a memory of what almost happened. And what still could have, if I hadn't trusted my gut. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking of Sophie's face so open, so innocent. And Julia's tight with guilt, haunted by years of being overlooked. The tension in our family wasn't new. But this? This was the first time it had taken physical form. The next morning, I made a decision. Mom needed to hear it all. No more pretending, no more dodging. I drove over to her house just after 10 a.m. Before she could leave for her bridge group or volunteer shift, whatever activity she'd lined up to keep herself busy and adored. She opened the door in one of her signature sweater sets. Pearls in place, mascara perfect. Claire, this is a surprise. I need to talk to you, I said simply. Inside, the living room looked exactly like I remembered growing up, everything symmetrical, nothing out of place. She gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing. This isn't a casual visit, I said. It's about Julia. Mom's smile tightened. What did she do this time? I took a deep breath. She made a mistake, a serious one. But before I tell you what happened, I need you to listen, not with judgment. Just listen. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. So I told her. I didn't mention the cookies, not directly. Just said that Julia had been pushed to a breaking point, that she admitted she needed help, and that a lot of that pain traced back to how we were raised, how she was treated, how the favoritism didn't just hurt her, it hurt all of us. You always said I was the responsible one, the gifted one, but what you never saw was what that did to Julia. Mom opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. No, just let me finish, because I never said it before, and maybe that's on me. But Julia didn't just grow up in my shadow, you put her there. Every time you praised me in front of her, every time you dismissed her effort, you built a wall between us. She could have worked harder, Mom said quietly. I pushed you because I saw something in you, and you ignored what was in her. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from her, I never meant to make her feel small. But she did, I said. And now Ethan is going through the same thing. That finally got her attention. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? Mom, he's struggling in school, at home. And every time you compare him to Sophie, even if it's not on purpose, it chips away at him. I saw it in Julia's eyes, and I've seen it in Ethan's. The room was still. It was strange, watching my mother, the woman who always had a retort, always had an answer, sit there with her hands clenched in her lap, saying nothing. Eventually, I stood up. You always said, family is everything. If that's still true, it's time to show it. Not with praise, not with gifts, but with effort. Start by treating your grandkids like they both matter. Then I left. No dramatic ending, no final word, just silence and the faint sound of the front door clicking shut behind me. That weekend, I asked Sophie to help me clean the guest room. Why? She asked, peering at me over the broom. Because I want to invite Ethan over next week. Her eyebrows shot up. Really? Really? I thought maybe you could show him your camera. He might like it. She tilted her head, thinking, yeah, actually, I think he would. He's into that vintage stuff, right? Like old coins and maps? Exactly. And I think he could use a change of scenery. Sophie didn't ask why. Maybe she didn't need to. Maybe, deep down, she'd always felt the unspoken tension, too. By Tuesday, the room was ready, fresh sheets, a stack of graphic novels from Sophie's shelf, and an extra pair of headphones, just in case. Julia dropped Ethan off that afternoon. He stepped inside hesitantly, eyes darting around. Taller than I remembered, quieter too. Hey, Ethan, I said, offering a soft smile. Glad you're here. He nodded. Thanks for inviting me. Sophie came bounding down the stairs. I saved a spot in Minecraft for you, she said. And I've got this game where we pretend to be old-timey treasure hunters. You in? Ethan's lips curved into the first real smile I'd seen on him in months. Definitely. They disappeared into the living room, laughter echoing soon after. It was such a small sound, but it filled every corner of the house. A kind of healing I hadn't known we needed. Julia stayed back, hovering near the front door. You sure about this? She asked, voice low. I am. She looked tired, but lighter. He talks about Sophie more than I realized. She treats him like he's normal. He is normal, Julia, I said gently. He just hasn't had space to be himself. She nodded slowly, her gaze drifting toward the sound of the kids arguing over loot chests. I've started therapy, she said. I needed to. There's a lot I have to untangle. I reached out and squeezed her arm, one step at a time. That night, as I sat in bed reading, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Can we talk soon? I want to see Ethan. And Julia, I think I need to apologize. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, yes, let's make that happen. And for the first time in weeks, I turned off the light and fell asleep without dread clawing at my chest. The day Mom came over, the skies were heavy with gray. It felt right, somehow. Not stormy, not sunny, just still. Like the world was waiting to see which way we'd all move next. I'd kept things simple. No coffee, no snacks, no distractions. Just the living room, chairs facing each other, space between us filled with everything we'd left unsaid. Eleanor Sterling arrived precisely at 11:00 a.m. As always, punctual, lipstick just right. She carried a handbag like she was going to brunch, not to unpack decades of emotional wreckage, but her eyes gave her away. There was something in the way she looked around. Less judgment, more nervousness, maybe regret. I opened the door fully. Come in. She stepped inside like someone walking into unfamiliar territory, even though she'd been here a dozen times. We didn't hug. Instead, I led her to the couch and sat opposite. She set her bag down, folded her hands in her lap, and took a slow breath. I've been thinking about what you said. I nodded, letting her speak. For a long time, she continued, I believed I was helping, that I was pushing you both to be your best in the ways I thought you needed. You weren't, I said, calm, not cruel. You were choosing one over the other. Again and again, her shoulders sank. I see that now, she whispered. I see how I made Julia feel invisible, like she was always behind. And I hate that I didn't see it sooner. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But part of me, maybe the part raised by her, still waited for the shift, the subtle deflection, the return to control. Claire, she said suddenly, her voice thinner. What happened to us? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I don't know when things got so quiet between us. I used to know everything. Now I find out from your sister that Ethan's staying here, that you confronted Julia about something serious. And I don't even know what. I held her gaze. You don't know because you've never asked. She blinked. You check in with your opinions, not your heart, I added. You comment on Ethan's grades, not how he's feeling. You praise Sophie's accomplishments, but don't ask what they cost her. That's why. She looked down. I know, she said quietly. And I want to change. Change. That word again. It sounded so good. So easy. But I knew better. Then it starts with showing up, I said. No speeches. No comparing. Just being there for Julia, for Ethan, even when it's messy, she nodded. Could I see him today? I hesitated. He's upstairs with Sophie. But yeah, I think he'd like that. She stood, her eyes wet but determined. Then I'll wait. Upstairs, Sophie and Ethan were sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, flipping through a stack of photographs. I like this one, Sophie said, holding up a picture of their backyard at golden hour. The light looks like it's glowing. Ethan smiled shyly. That's backlighting. It happens when the sun's behind the subject. You can do cool stuff with shadows, too. You should teach me. I could. His voice was quiet, but steady. Sophie's head tilted. You're way smarter than people think, you know? He looked down. Most people don't stick around long enough to find out. She didn't respond right away. Just handed him another photo and said, Well, I'm sticking. When they came downstairs, Mom stood up slowly. Her eyes softened when she saw Ethan, taller than she remembered, quieter than she expected. Hello, sweetheart, she said. Hi, he replied, shifting slightly behind Sophie like she was a shield. Mom didn't press forward, just smiled gently. I'm really glad you're here. And I'd love to see more of your photos sometime. I heard they're quite impressive. Ethan blinked, caught between suspicion and surprise. Sure. I'd like to learn, she added, voice barely above a whisper. If you're willing to teach me. Sophie nudged him. You should. She's hopeless with tech. It'll be hilarious. He grinned despite himself. Okay, maybe. Small steps, but steps all the same. Over the next few weeks, something began to shift. Ethan started staying over more often Friday nights mostly. He and Sophie would game, draw, talk about camera lenses and graphic novels, and everything in between. For the first time in a long while, I saw him relax. He laughed more. He started teasing back. And Julia? She was still fragile, still healing, but she came over for dinner now, helped set the table, talked to Daniel about budgeting, asked me about schools that might have strong photography programs for Ethan. We weren't fixed, but we were moving. One night, while the kids were watching a documentary in the living room, Julia and I sat on the back patio with tea. The stars were out, and the garden lights cast a soft glow. I saw Mom last week, she said. I raised an eyebrow. She asked me to coffee, said she wanted to apologize. In person, and she did. No excuses. No backhanded compliments. Just an apology. That's new. I almost didn't know what to do with it. We both laughed quietly. Not bitter this time, just honest. I think she's trying, I said. She is, Julia agreed. But it's hard. For her. For us. Even now, part of me still wants to shout at her for everything. You can. You're allowed. She smiled. Maybe later. Right now, I'm just grateful. For the first time in years, I feel like Ethan has a village. I looked through the window. He and Sophie were side by side, arms crossed, deep in debate over whether to rewatch a scene. My heart softened. He always had one, I said. He just didn't know yet. It was mid-April when Sophie came home waving a flyer like it was a golden ticket. Guess what, mister? Henley picked Ethan for the student showcase at school. His photos are going to be on display in the gym for open house. I blinked. Seriously? Dead serious, she said, breathless from excitement. One of his shots? The one with the broken fence and wildflowers? Mr. Henley said. It had soul. Like actual soul. My chest tightened, then slowly softened. It wasn't pride exactly, at least, not in the usual sense. It was relief. Hope. The quiet kind that settles deep instead of flashing loud. When Julia called me later that night, her voice trembled with something that sounded like disbelief. He's smiling more, she said. He's even talking to the other kids at photography club. I don't know who this version of him is, but I like it. He's not a new version, I told her. He's just finally being seen. The open house was the following Thursday. Daniel got home early, shirt tucked neatly, shoulders tense the way they always got when he stepped out of the office and into dad mode. He smiled on cue, asked about Sophie's presentation, nodded at the right times. But I knew that look. We'd been doing this for years, polished performances, subtle distance. The kind of marriage that looks stable from a distance, but up close, has seams that never quite hold. Still, we walked into the gym together, our daughter bouncing ahead of us. Rows of folding panels stood like temporary walls, covered with artwork, essays, and photographs. And then I saw it, Ethan's section. 3 photos, perfectly spaced, one of rusted mailboxes overtaken by ivy, one of the back of a girl's silhouette lit by sunrise, and one, my favorite, of an abandoned swing set, half swallowed by snow, with a child's red mitten left behind. It didn't need a caption. The story was all there. People paused at his work, pointed, whispered. Eleanor stood a few feet ahead, arms folded, staring at the photos, not talking, just absorbing. Ethan, standing beside Julia, shifted nervously. She gently nudged him forward. "Hi, Grandma," he said, voice quiet but clear. Eleanor turned, and for a moment, she didn't speak. Then she leaned in closer, looked at the mitten photo again, and whispered something I didn't expect. "It's haunting." In the best way. Ethan blinked. She turned to face him fully. "I'm proud of you, Ethan. Truly." It was the first time I'd ever heard her say it that way to him, not just about him. Ethan didn't smile right away. He didn't leap into her arms, but he nodded. And that was enough. Later, after the crowd thinned and the kids were running around the gym, Daniel and I found a quiet spot by the bleachers. "You okay?" I asked, watching him scan the room. He sighed. "Yeah, just tired. Not from tonight. Just everything." That was the thing with Daniel. He never exploded, he just eroded quietly. I took a deep breath. "Can I ask you something?" He glanced at me. "Sure. Do you think we're happy or just functional?" His jaw tensed. That's a loaded question, I know. But we've been moving like 2 gears in the same machine. And lately I've been wondering if we forgot what it feels like to just be us. He didn't answer at first. Just looked at the kids laughing across the room. I think somewhere along the way, we started measuring success in checkboxes. Mortgage paid. Kids thriving. Marriage intact. But not much else. I nodded. "I miss you sometimes. Even when you're right next to me." He looked down. "I miss you too." It wasn't a dramatic moment. No big confessions. No tears. But something in the air shifted. A crack of honesty we hadn't let in for a long time. Maybe this story wasn't just about Julia and me. Maybe all of us were running old scripts we hadn't questioned in years. That weekend, Julia hosted a small get-together at her place. Nothing fancy, just tacos, sparkling water, a playlist of 2000s hits, and laughter that bounced off the kitchen walls. Eleanor came too. She didn't hover, didn't dominate, just sat next to Ethan on the couch, while he explained the difference between prime and zoom lenses. Claire from a year ago wouldn't have believed this scene. At one point, I stepped outside to get some air. The sun was setting behind the old brick buildings, washing everything in orange. Daniel followed me out. "Remember when we used to sit on our own porch and dream about this kind of quiet?" he asked. "I do," I said. "Maybe we stopped dreaming and started just surviving." "Maybe," I said, "but we don't have to keep it that way." He nodded. "Let's fix what we can. No promises, just intent. Sometimes that's stronger." That night, Sophie found an old photo album buried in the bottom drawer of our hallway cabinet, one we hadn't opened in years. "Whoa," she said, flipping through. "You and Aunt Julia had the same haircut. Very mushroom chic." I laughed. It was the 90s. "Forgive us." She passed the book to Ethan, who pointed at a camping photo. "Is that your mom making s'mores with her eyes closed?" "Looks like it," Sophie said, giggling. "We have to recreate this. All of it. Even the bad bangs." The two of them disappeared upstairs, plotting their next sibling-level prank or cousin adventure. I didn't know what they'd come up with, but I knew it would be harmless, honest, connected, everything we'd forgotten for too long. 6 months passed like a soft breath. Not everything was fixed. Not everything would be. But the heaviness that once lived in the corners of our family had finally started to lift. The biggest change? We'd stopped pretending everything was fine just because it looked that way. Julia had started working part-time at the local arts co-op. It wasn't glamorous, but she loved it. She helped organize student exhibits and built an after-school program for kids interested in photography. Ethan was thriving. His photos had been picked for a statewide youth competition, and he was now saving for his own camera reel gear, not hand-me-downs. Every weekend, he and Sophie explored new missions around town, abandoned buildings, forgotten trails, hidden corners of the library. They'd come home with dirt on their shoes and stories in their eyes. One afternoon, I overheard Sophie say, "You're like my twin, but with better lighting." Ethan laughed, really laughed. Not the polite, short kind, but the kind that spills out when you forget to hold back. That sound still gets me. Daniel and I weren't exactly new people, but we were better versions of who we used to be. We talked more, not just about schedules and bills, but about what we needed, what we missed, what we wanted to rebuild. Every Thursday night, we sat out on the porch, no phones, no work, and just talked. Some weeks we argued. Other times we said nothing, but we showed up. And somehow, that became the foundation we'd forgotten we needed. As for Mom, she didn't transform overnight. People don't. But she started showing up differently, listening more, talking less. She brought Ethan a lens cleaning kit one afternoon and asked if he could teach her what aperture actually means. He taught her patiently. And when she took a blurry photo of the neighbor's cat, he didn't roll his eyes. He just adjusted the settings and smiled. One Saturday in late October, we all ended up in my backyard. Daniel was at the grill. Sophie was making spooky lemonade with dry ice, and Julia was chasing Ethan with a can of silly string. It was loud, chaotic, beautiful. I stood back for a moment, just watching. Mom was sitting on the patio steps holding a camera. She wasn't taking charge. She wasn't performing. She was just present. She lifted the camera and snapped a picture Ethan and Sophie mid-laugh, their faces lit by the soft light of golden hour. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't capturing the moment to show anyone. She just wanted to remember it. Later that evening, when the sun dipped below the fence line and the grill smoke had faded, Julia and I sat together on a blanket in the grass. It had been a long time since we'd done that. We watched the kids string lights between the trees, their laughter echoing like wind chimes in warm air. "You know what I've learned?" Julia said, staring up at the sky. "Bitterness grows fast when it's left alone. But healing? That stuff's slow, like vines. But it holds when it finally takes root." I nodded. I used to think keeping things pretty made them okay. The house, the job, the pictures on social media. But none of it mattered when we were all silently breaking. She glanced over at me. "We're not broken anymore. Not shattered," I agreed. "Just patched. And that's enough." She leaned her head against my shoulder like she used to when we were kids. "I'm glad you didn't eat the cookies." I laughed softly. "Me too." She paused, then added, "I still think about that moment. What I did. What I almost did." "I know," I said, "but it's what you did afterward that matters now." We sat in silence, letting the air fill with the music of kids, crickets, and wind in the trees. A week later, Ethan's photo won second place in the state competition. We drove 3 hours to see the exhibit. Julia, Mom, Sophie, Daniel, and me, all in one car, somehow still speaking by the time we arrived. Ethan's photo, an overhead shot of a cracked sidewalk, with a single dandelion growing through, hung on a white wall, with a ribbon pinned beside it. I stood in front of it for a while. The caption beneath read, Some things grow best when no one expects them to. Ethan A. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Sophie slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "He's awesome, isn't he?" "He really is," I said. We never spoke again about that day with the cookies. We didn't need to. The memory lived in each of us differently, but it didn't define us anymore. Instead, we made new memories. Sundays became game nights. Julia taught Ethan how to budget. I taught Sophie how to shoot in manual mode. Daniel helped both kids set up a DIY darkroom in the garage. Even Mom started writing down old family recipes, asking us to help her test them. Life wasn't suddenly simple, but it was honest. We learned how to be together again, without needing everything to be perfect. We forgave without forgetting. We listened without waiting to reply. We chose each other day after day. And me? I stopped measuring my worth by clean countertops and gold stars. I found something steadier, softer. It looked like burnt pancakes on a Sunday morning, mismatched socks on a growing boy, and a teenage girl who no longer needed to prove herself every hour of the day. It looked like us, not flawless, but full of light. The kind that stays even when things get dark again. The kind that reminds you are home. Story 2. On the suburbs of Boston, in a peaceful residential neighborhood, stood a white, two-story wooden home. The entryway was decorated with a well-kept flower bed, where the season's final blooms fiercely flowered before winter arrived. This house's resident, Julie Williams, was standing at the kitchen island, jotting down the details of her anniversary supper in her notebook. 15 years, she whispered. She sounded a little sentimental and a little tired. Judy, with her shoulder-length, lustrous chestnut hair, and her insistence on wearing business suits, was an agent who was starting to make a name for herself at a local real estate firm. Her coworkers had a great deal of faith in her. The happy-looking picture of Judy and her husband Thomas is displayed on the kitchen wall. Thomas, whose eyes were grayish-blue, was a middle manager at a Boston investment firm. Judy had been drawn to him because of his good looks, aura of intelligence, and occasional boyish smile. On the surface, they seemed to have a wonderful house, a successful career, a flawless marriage, and mutual understanding. That was the appearance, anyhow. Thomas used to return home around 6 o'clock in the evening, but things have changed recently. He had been showing up at 9, or occasionally after 10 for the previous few months. He stated that job is busy, and Judy immediately demonstrated that he understood. She was concerned, though, since he had grown so dependent on his phone that he even brought it to the restroom. He also began going out more on the weekends for work-related obligations, which significantly decreased the amount of time they spent together. There was a slight tension as the conversations faded. Is it possible to earn $10,000 a month only from YouTube? From home all? With her stories, I accomplished precisely that. No voice, no face. If you're interested and have started to invade their bedroom, click a link in the description. Nevertheless, Judy's heart jumped when Thomas proposed that they celebrate their 15th wedding anniversary with supper at the fancy restaurant Rue Chateau. They had chosen to get married at Le Chateau, Boston's most exclusive French restaurant, which was also the most challenging to reserve. Thomas had recalled that particular location. Hope sprang back into her eyes, and she thought, "We still have a shot. What are your thoughts?" "Do I still look good with this dress?" Judy called Martha, her best friend, and requested. A picture of Judy in a black party dress she'd bought a decade earlier appeared on the smartphone screen. "You look amazing. Thomas will undoubtedly pass out." Martha's tone changed from one of joy to one of seriousness very fast. "But are you truly all right, Judy?" "Thomas. Lately?" "Apparently." Judy stopped her companion. "Don't worry. Marriages experience several stages. Just one of them is this. The anniversary will undoubtedly strengthen our bond." Judy hung up the phone and looked at the outfit she had grabbed from the wardrobe. She had taken every precaution to keep her marriage to Thomas safe. She had juggled her career and home flawlessly, making an effort to fit in with his interests and pastimes. On the day of their anniversary, however, she saw his heart slowly slipping away. Unusually, Thomas showered and changed and arrived home early. When Judy showed up in her black dress, he was waiting for her in the living room. Thomas's eyes brightened a little. "You look stunning," he replied, holding her a little jewelry box. Judy opened the package to reveal a delicately designed diamond necklace. "This is beautiful, Thomas." She gave her hubby a passionate hug. Thomas returned her embrace with a smile. They felt as though they had rediscovered a closeness they had long since lost. "Would you please put it on?" Thomas carefully pulled Judy's hair and put the necklace over her neck as she turned her back. He smiled and replied, "Perfect," but something appeared to be hidden in his eyes. Judy slipped her arm around Thomas's and pushed the uneasiness away. "Come on, it looks like this evening will be fantastic." Judy was positive that tonight would be a memorable evening as they walked out of the home. She genuinely hopes that their relationship would improve as a result of this anniversary night. Converted from a 19th century estate, Le Chateau was a posh restaurant located in downtown Boston. Antique furniture and artworks are softly lighted by the soft light coming through stained glass windows. A guy employee in uniform opened the door and gave Judy and Thomas a polite greeting. "Miss S. and Mr. Williams, you have been anticipated." Senior waiter Arthur escorted the two after they checked in at the door. Arthur stood with superb posture, his silver hair slicked back, and he seemed to be in his 60s. He had years of experience in his manner. "I am aware that today marks the anniversary of your marriage. For you, we have a special table ready." They followed Arthur to a tiny nook at the rear of the main eating area. White flowers graced the table, and a semicircular window provided a panoramic view of Boston's night skyline. Judy caught her breath, moved. She smiled at Arthur and thanked him for the beautiful table. Thomas just nodded and pulled out his phone to look at the screen right away. Judy sighed somewhat at that gesture, but she didn't want to spoil the great night. Thomas glanced over the wine list for a moment before Arthur handed it to him and remarked, "A bottle of champagne." Thomas said, "I'm going to the bathroom for a moment," and left his seat unoccupied after Arthur had left. Judy looked out the window at the nighttime view of Boston. She was reminded of the night by the city lights, which glowed like stars. She had agreed to Thomas's proposal 15 years prior. Everything had appeared to shine back then. She grinned as she glanced at her ring. After 5 minutes or so, Thomas came back. He pulled out his phone once more, looking a little agitated. "Work. Make contact?" Thomas quickly put his phone aside when Judy asked, "I'll try not to worry about it tonight, but yes, there is a small issue at hand." They toasted once the champagne was brought over. Their spectacles the sound of touching reverberated in the silent room. Judy plucked up the guts to start. "Thomas, I feel like we're getting farther apart lately." Thomas's look briefly changed to one of astonishment, but it soon returned. "What are you saying? You arrive home late. You seldom spend the weekends at home, and you've grown dependent on your phone." Quietly, Judy said, "Is anything wrong?" Thomas exhaled deeply, simply said, "Work is hectic. Now that a new project has begun, everyone is working frantically. You have nothing to be concerned about." His eyes were not grinning, but he gave a little smile. Judy didn't follow it up. Tonight, she didn't want to dispute. "I get it. However, I desire a connection with you where we can communicate more." Arthur delivered the menus. The chef's suggestions for today start with foie gras and lobster. Wagyu filet with truffle sauce is the main entree. After closing the menu, Thomas placed an order for 2 of the chef's taster courses. The chef's course was the most costly item on Judy's chateau's menu, which astonished her. "This is a unique evening," Thomas remarked. "Let's also have a nice wine." On the wine list, he indicated a 2015 Romani Conti. Judy's gaze expanded. Each bottle of the wine cost several $1,000s. "Thomas, what a costly wine. Everything is all right." Thomas cut him off. "Tonight is our night to indulge, isn't it?" Arthur took heed of the directive and left with grace. "I'm going to the bathroom again," Thomas stated, taking another glance at his smartphone. Although Judy was more worried about his expenditures while they were wealthy, this was the second time she thought it was a little strange. While Thomas was away from the table, the typical Thomas would have referred to this type of expenditure as wasteful. Judy sipped her champagne and thought, is it possible that Thomas was experiencing guilt? Or did he simply wish to add a particular touch to their anniversary? She was thinking deeply at the time. Thomas felt a vibration on his smartphone. The phone on the table lighted up, briefly showing a portion of a message. "The final night is tonight. Our new life from a sender named Rachel starts tomorrow. For a second, Judy thought her heart had stopped. She averted her gaze from the phone and made an effort to relax. Her mind was racing with options. Did this indicate anything different before Thomas came back? Or was he having an affair? Judy inhaled deeply before calming her face. She was feeling suspicious and anxious, but she wanted to take a closer look at the issue. After about 10 minutes, Thomas reappeared, his complexion a little strange. "Are you all right?" Thomas, a little worn out, answered Judy's question. They served the appetizers. When Judy saw the beautifully presented food, she briefly forgot her nervousness. "It's lovely," she remarked. Though he appeared preoccupied, Thomas nodded. As he began preparing her entree, he pulled out his phone once again to verify something. Judy made an effort to talk to Thomas. Recollections of their time as students, stories of failed first dates and honeymoon escapades. For the two, they were priceless memories, but Thomas's answers were flimsy, often simply nodding absently before the main meal arrived. Thomas used the restroom for the third time. Judy's conflicted emotions of rage and dread were overwhelming her. She wanted to see whether he was talking to someone or whether he was really using the restroom. She changed her mind, though, believing that doing so would diminish her dignity. Thomas came back when Arthur presented the main meal. Thomas had a wonderfully cooked Wagyu steak with truffle sauce on his dish. His gaze stiffened for a minute as he glanced at it. "What's the matter?" Thomas faked a grin and replied, "My stomach doesn't feel well," in response to Judy's question. "You chose a rather pricey course, but I doubt I'll be able to eat today." Judy couldn't understand. "As long as you find it enjoyable, it's okay," Thomas said. "If you're happy, I'm pleased, too." Those remarks were true, yet Judy felt that something wasn't right. She glanced at the roast duck with orange sauce that she was eating. Although everything appeared to be really tasty, she was also becoming less hungry. They brought the pricey wine. After expressing gratitude, Thomas replenished the sommelier's glass. "To your well-being." Thomas held up his glass. "Into what is ahead?" Judy lifted her glass. It was an odd impact on her. Thomas's comments held a secret for her. His eyes and all he did. She took a little drink of the wine, but kept her grin intact. Thomas was going to get back up after taking a quick peek at his smartphone. Judy grabbed his arm out of impulse and continued. Her voice was tinged with unmasked annoyance. Apologies. A crucial message. As though feeling something from Judy, Thomas's demeanor changed as he started to speak. "No, it's all right. Tonight, I'll remain with you." But he took a seat again before the main meal. Judy was on the verge of touching her food when an unsaid tension suddenly loomed between them. "Wait a minute," said Thomas. His speech had a sense of urgency. Judy paused, startled, and turned to face her husband. "First, let's toast." Thomas filled her glass with the rich crimson wine from the Romany candy bottle. His hands trembled a little as he poured into his own glass and held it up. "To our 15 years of matrimony." Judy's eyes met her husband's. There was a feeling there that could not be described. Fear, worry, or tension. She was unable to read it. The only thing she knew for sure was that these were not. Thomas's soft, serene eyes. "Up to 15 years. Judy responded by raising her glass as well, but she only took a little drink. There was something strange about his strange conduct and the pricey wine at this upscale restaurant. It all made her suspicious. She set down her glass. Judy returned her focus to the meal. The roast duck on its ornate dish surely looked delicious. But when she noticed that Thomas was not even touching his dinner, she began to wonder, "Do you not intend to eat?" "I just don't feel well in my stomach," Thomas added with another smile. Little beads of perspiration seemed to be gathering on his forehead, and that grin seemed forced. As Judy lifted her fork, he brought the wine to his lips once again and took a big sip. There was a little ruckus coming from the restaurant door. As she gazed in that way, Thomas's gaze landed on her plate, and he briefly displayed a holding his breath expression. But before Judy could turn around again, he was grinning as like nothing had occurred. Judy replied, "It's a pity you can't eat, but it's a lovely dinner." "Yes," Thomas answered, "it's really a pity." But he also seems a little relieved. "But it's okay if you like it." When waiter Arthur arrived to pour water, their talk was cut off. Although Arthur poured the water elegantly, his actions appeared to have a hint of hurry. "Please check under your plate, madam." he murmured gently as he stood next to Judy while he poured the water. Thomas didn't appear to hear him because his voice was barely audible. Setting down the carafe, Arthur nodded and left. Anxiety was evident on his face. Judy couldn't understand what was meant by Arthur's words. She turned to face her husband, but Thomas was once more looking at his phone. There was more perspiration on his brow. The wine could have been a little too potent. Thomas gave an excuse-seeming smile. "I'll use the restroom." Judy's heart started pounding the instant he got up from his chair. She kept repeating Arthur's remarks to herself. "Check under your plate, please." "Beneath the plate?" "Why?" she gasped, as she cautiously raised her dish a little after making sure Thomas's form had vanished toward the rear of the eatery. In an attempt to blend in with the surroundings, a little piece of paper was placed beneath the plate. Judy slipped the paper beneath her napkin in a hurry. She had trembling hands. In the shade of the napkin, she unfolded the paper and read the words on it. "This meal contains poison. Under no circumstances should you consume it. Your spouse is attempting to murder you." For a little minute, it seemed as though everything had stopped. Judy heard the words replaying in her head. Poison. Thomas is attempting to murder me. A joke. Or she trembled more. The smartphone showed the message. Thomas's peculiar actions. The substantial insurance benefit. The parts started to come together to create a horrifying image. She recalled that she had considerably upped her life insurance policy 6 months prior at Thomas's recommendation. He had mentioned it was just in case. She was abruptly confined by the opulent decor of the restaurant, which seemed like a jail. Judy's chest felt constricted as she attempted to inhale deeply. She was unable to determine whether this was a nightmare or reality. There came the sound of Thomas coming back. Judy quickly tucked a piece of paper into her purse and made an effort to if nothing had occurred, but she was unable to conceal the blood that had probably drained from her face. "What's the matter?" Thomas sat down and inquired. "You appear pallid. It isn't anything." Judy knew herself too well to smile. "That must have been a very strange smile. I'm just a little worn out." Thomas appeared to be relieved. "It makes sense to me. Lately, you've been very busy." He attempted to pour the wine into her glass. "Do you want a little more?" "No, thank you," Judy said abruptly. "My stomach is actually a little bit as well, I see," Thomas said. His expression briefly changed to one of panic. "However, it's a very unique dish. Try eating a little, will you?" Judy was horrified by those words. Was he genuinely attempting to persuade her to consume a contaminated food? Why? Why would her spouse act in this manner? "In fact, I'm also beginning to feel sick to my stomach." "Oh," Judy said. "It's a shame for a dinner this special." There was a sense of urgency in Thomas's face. "I understand. Maybe just one bite, though, since we're here. I apologize." Judy got to her feet. "I'm taking a quick break to use the restroom." She was able to get up and made her way to the women's restroom. Judy hurried into a stall as soon as she shut the door, and she pulled out her smartphone with trembling hands. She called Martha, her best friend. "Martha, something horrible is happening," she whispered as soon as the call connected. "What is it, Judy? Calm down." Martha's voice was filled with concern. "Thomas? Thomas is attempting to murder me." Judy explained the events at the restaurant in a rushed voice, holding back tears. The note under the plate. Thomas's peculiar actions. He's not touching his own food and is urging her to eat. "I'll call the police." "You need to get out of there right now," Martha immediately said, "but I still don't have concrete proof." Judy's voice was trembling. "What if I'm wrong? What if this is some kind of malicious prank?" "Judy, you shouldn't take the risk," Martha said, "but if you want more evidence, ask for help from the restaurant staff, especially the waiter who gave you the note." "I'll do that," Judy said. "I'll try to gather a bit more evidence, but I'll contact you right away if anything happens." After hanging up, Judy stood in front of the mirror and stared at her face. It was white, and her eyes were wide with fear. She took repeated deep breaths, trying to regain her composure before leaving the bathroom. She once again took the piece of paper from her bag and reread the words. "Your spouse is attempting to murder you." Those words had a terrifying realism. Judy put the paper back in her bag and straightened her shoulders. She needed to keep a cool head and act calmly. She couldn't run away just yet. First, she had to gather evidence and find a way to escape safely. Who would have thought her life would be in danger in such an unexpected place? Judy took one more deep breath and left the restroom. 15 years of marriage with Thomas, shared experiences, joys, tragedies. Were they all falsehoods, or had anything altered him? As Judy returned to the restaurant floor, she struggled to conceal her shaking hands. When Judy returned to the table, Thomas was nervously gazing at his watch. As she sat down, he put on a false smile. "Are you all right? You took quite a while." "Yes, just a bit." Judy pretended to be calm and stared at her plate. "Actually, my stomach is starting to feel horrible, too. It's a pity for such a nice supper." A worried expression flashed on Thomas's face. "I understand, but while we're here, maybe you could try eating just a bit. This dish is the result of the chef's greatest effort." Judy responded, "I can't right now. When I'm feeling better, perhaps we can take the meal home to eat. Let's get it over with." It was obvious that Thomas's face had gone pale. Such upscale food isn't appropriate for takeaway. In addition, this is our 15th anniversary meal. Judy shot back, "If nothing else, I want to thank the chef." Judy summoned Arthur before Thomas could answer. "Please pardon me. Is it possible for us to meet the chef? Unfortunately, we're both feeling under the weather, even though the meal looks delicious." Arthur took a quick look at Thomas. The chef is obviously quite busy right now, but it should be feasible to say hello briefly. "Please." In this manner, he motioned for Judy to come along. "I will also attend." Arthur gently stopped Thomas before he could get to his feet. "I'm sorry, but we can only take one visitor at a time to the cooking area due to hygienic concerns. She will return soon." Despite his displeasure, Thomas went back to his seat. They seemed to be going to the kitchen, and Judy followed Arthur. Once, they went into a staff hallway that was hidden from view. Arthur paused and looked at Judy. He had a solemn look. He replied softly, "Your husband was at this restaurant yesterday, madame." After he and Chef Carlos had a lengthy talk, I saw Carlos accept a sizable payment. Judy's heart pounded. "For what reason?" "I don't know for sure, but I witnessed Carlos add something to the meal for a particular table number using a unique spice." Arthur pulled his phone out of his pocket and displayed a picture to Judy. It showed Thomas giving a man who looked like Carlos something. I covertly snapped this picture. I sensed a strange movement, but I wasn't certain. Judy let out a gasp. "My food has. Indeed. Carlos gave your duck meal a unique spice. Your husband's meal had nothing added to it." Arthur's demeanor remained solemn. "For more than 30 years, I have been employed at this restaurant. Although I've seen a lot, this is the first time I've seen something like." "The proof was weak, but I wasn't sure if I should call the police," Judy whispered. "Is it possible for me to try a bit of the dish?" Arthur produced a little jar and nodded. "That's exactly what I was thinking." Rushing back to the dining room, he transferred some of Judy's meal into the container. "Kindly provide this as proof. Carlos is not going to admit. He and your spouse are conspirators, in my opinion." Judy pulled out her phone out of the blue. "I'm really filming this exchange," I said, she said. Arthur appeared taken aback, but he soon understood. "That will provide as solid proof as well." "Arthur, thank you." Judy expressed her sincere appreciation. Arthur responded, "Don't worry about it if you hadn't warned me. But watch out tonight. We should get out of here early." Feigning a marital argument while avoiding loneliness, Judy took a long breath to gather her thoughts before nodding. "I must take action." Arthur took the original path back to Judy, acting as though they'd just left a quick meeting with the cook. He spoke loudly, "I will convey the chef's apologies." Thomas was waiting at the table, and Judy went back there. It appeared that he had already paid the bill. Thomas, the chef, inquired. "He appeared to be rather occupied," Judy remarked, "but I told him I couldn't eat the meal since I was feeling sick." He appeared contrite. Thomas seemed a little relieved. "I understand. Shall we then head home?" "Let's do that, all right." Judy concurred. She linked her arm through Thomas's inside and placed the container in her bag. Although she was trembling with fear, she pretended to be a composed wife. As they walked out of the eatery, Arthur bid them farewell. Judy nodded slightly in response to his slight nod. Entering the vehicle, Thomas exhaled deeply. "Our anniversary is unfortunate," Judy said. "Yes. However, there aren't many things you can do when you're feeling bad." Silence filled the car as it observed the city lights passing outside the window. Judy wondered what she would do next. A sample of the possibly contaminated food was in her bag, a copy of the picture Arthur had given her, and a tape recording of her talk with him. Thomas looked at Judy every now and then, wondering if she would take these bits of evidence to the police while driving. His expression had an inscrutable quality: disappointment, anger, or another feeling. Thomas parked the car and shut off the motor when he got home. He smiled artificially as he turned to Judy. "Tonight, you should get plenty of sleep. Tomorrow, I hope you feel better." "Indeed," Judy concurred. "Both of you." She hoped she wasn't trembling when she spoke. She intended to see the police tomorrow. To avoid raising Thomas's suspicions tonight, she simply needed to behave normally. Judy stated, "I think I'll lie down," as she entered the home and made her way to the bedroom. Thomas stayed in the living room and switched the television on. Judy instantly sent Martha a message and closed the door, gathered proof. "Tomorrow, I'm going to the cops." Pretending that tonight didn't happen, there was an instant response: "Take caution. If something goes wrong, get in touch with me immediately. I'll come get you right now if you need me." Judy closed her eyes and tucked her phone beneath her pillow. Thomas was still asleep when Judy got up early the following morning and discreetly got dressed. She immediately went to the police station after getting into Martha's car, which had come to pick her up. Judy's face was not one of fear when she arrived at the police station with proof, but one of resolve. She turned in the sample of possibly contaminated food, along with all the supporting documentation she had collected. The photos shot at the restaurant, the recording of her talk with Arthur. To the researcher, "MAAM, you've had a horrible experience." Holding her hand, an older female investigator said softly, "You did the right thing and shown courage." As soon as possible, the authorities started interviewing the chef of the restaurant and conducting poison tests on everyone involved. Carlos was also called in for interrogation. According to the test results, the meal contained a deadly amount of arsenic. Judy's recording, Arthur's testimony, and the images he took were the key pieces of evidence. A few nights later, Judy received a call from the police when she was temporarily sleeping at Martha's house. Detailed communications regarding the criminal plan with his lover, Rachel, were discovered on Thomas's smartphone when he was apprehended at their house. As an accomplice, Rachel was also taken into custody. Why? During the inquiry, Judy questioned the investigator. "He tried to murder me, but why? A $5 million life insurance policy in your name. It appears that he intended to use it to begin a new life with Rachel." The detective replied in a low voice. "They have acknowledged that they have been dating for 3 years. 3 months later, the trial got underway. In court, Judy turned to face Thomas and met his eyes directly. Anger that the scheme had failed was all that was seen in her ex-husband's eyes. In the end, Rachel was sentenced to 10 years in jail as an accomplice, while Thomas was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder and conspiracy to kill. 6 months following the experiment, Judy's divorce processes were concluded. She made the decision to relocate and begin a new life. Martha took a little box inside Judy's new apartment and stated, "This is the last box." Arthur was blotting perspiration from his forehead next to her. "I appreciate your assistance." Judy gave the two a grin. After leaving her chateau, Arthur became friends with Judy. The three started a little bistro called Second Chance a year after the event. The cafe gained popularity as a gathering spot for those who had conquered different obstacles. Judy discovered an envelope from the Massachusetts State Prison one peaceful evening as she was handling the cafe's accounts. In the mail, Thomas Williams was the sender. Her hands were shaking as she opened the letter. He apologized and said that he had been honest with himself while inside. Judy struggled with conflicting feelings for the guy she had loved, so she read the letter several times. She decided not to respond in writing. In the hopes of his recovery, she did, however, covertly create a fund to assist with his social reintegration upon his release. Judy looked out the window as her new family surrounded her in the cafe. She had been cruelly betrayed by life, but she had also been offered a fresh start. She had seen personally that genuine family is made up of relationships between individuals who help one another through tough times rather than blood ties.